Miami Dolphins not starting Tua in the playoffs. It's going to be Skylar Thompson. We've got news about a new extension for Roquan Smith and the Baltimore Ravens, and DeAndre Hopkins. It looks like he will not stick around in Arizona. All that and your questions coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. That's where most of the questions are coming from on today's episode. You can also drop a line to us in the YouTube comments as well. Appreciate everybody out there making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of P&W is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than your Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on that entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. So the biggest news around the league, we do have some good questions. Thanks everybody for your questions in advance, and apologies to those questions we do not get to. There's always more than we are able to cover in an episode, especially when we've got news like this week around the NFL. Let's start in Baltimore.
All right.
Where do you rank Roquan Smith? Probably top 2 trade deadline acquisition. Like it's either Roquan or probably Christian McCaffrey, right? Is the best trade deadline acquisitions. Both those teams in the playoffs, and they like Roquan Smith so much that they've re-upped him on a long-term contract in Baltimore.
Yeah, and I paid a lot. I actually wrote an article about it recently, and it was surrounding Devin Bush, Steelers, of course. A lot of these linebackers that come into the league as early picks that are extreme athletes, they get manipulated by guys like Shanahan, and it takes a year or two. But then when they start to hit their stride, you get what you have now in Roquan Smith, and he's really hitting his stride. He's phenomenal in coverage. He's a great athlete. He's got a great head for the game. He's the Batman, the Queen being the Robin, who's still going through some of that learning. Their defense got dramatically better after that acquisition from the start. We know that's how they have to play, too. I mean, the way the offense is constructed, especially when Lamar's not there. What I find incredible, though, is I didn't realize this till this morning, that Roquan represents himself, which I never think's a good idea, which brings me to Lamar as well. But have they been chatting during the season every step of the way? It's kind of odd for this to be announced on a Monday or Tuesday right after the year, and then it's not like they're eliminated. They got a game this week.
Right, yeah, everyone's getting fired and all of a sudden it's like,
right.
This signs a contract. I was like, wait a second, what? It was odd timing for that story, and I guess that's what can happen if you're not operating on the normal agent's schedule, and maybe an agent would have said, now let's wait and get some of those let's wait into the offseason and see how things look. But no, I mean, I like it. I don't mind when players represent themselves as long as they're cool with it. Then I'm cool with it,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And sometimes agents can do. I think agents can do some things dirty for players and teams and fans a lot of times, and so if you want to represent yourself, more power to you. And we've seen
you're capable.
Right. We've seen some players do it in the past, and it's worked out great for them. We've seen it do it in the past. And it's like, you probably didn't get the best deal, but as long as you know that going in and you're cool with it, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. And it never made sense for me for Baltimore to give up a second-round pick, I think a 5th as well, just to rent them for the rest of the year. Like, this had to be the plan all along. Mm-hmm. But it brings me to a little conspiracy theory, BP, here, is as we record this, noon Eastern, Wednesday, we don't know if Lamar's playing or not. Hasn't played in a long time, hasn't practiced in a long time. I really have a strong indicator that Lamar may have thrown his last pass in a Ravens uniform. I feel that way. Several people have told me these things, that he will be very likely traded to an AFC South team in the off season. If he doesn't play this week, I mean, and you got to look at it from a Ravens perspective. You just gave huge money to a linebacker. Are you also going to give huge money to the quarterback? I mean, I'm sure they can make it work, but I'm just getting a very serious vibe that they're going to be one and done. It's going to be ugly, and Lamar's going to be elsewhere.
You really get that feeling if they
Yeah.
don't make a run in the playoffs with Lamar coming back.
Yeah.
And it's almost the perfect storm of Lamar not coming back with everything exactly how it's gone this whole year. And by the way, speaking of representation with Lamar Jackson,
Right.
and not wanting to do whatever the Baltimore Ravens were offering, then you see him get hurt. And the reason you may not want to go guarantees for a quarterback like Lamar Jackson because of play style is because of injury and some of those things. And I think most teams don't want to go with all the guarantees anyway. I think it's going to clearly be an outlier with what happened with especially top of the market, that much money guaranteed with the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson. So all that put together, and then it's almost telling the Ravens why they don't want to do a deal. And then there's personal feelings that get interweaved.
Right.
I think the Ravens will probably end up getting killed if they don't end up caving and giving Lamar whatever he wants. But I really see it from their side too. And I don't blame Lamar's side. I don't blame the Ravens side. It's just sort of the perfect storm to get us here. And I get the same feeling, Matt. This might be it, especially if the Ravens are bounced out of the playoffs early and Lamar Jackson's not able to play for them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, and think of the haul that Atlanta or Carolina or I could probably come up with 10 teams would give you for this guy. Especially if deep down Harbaugh looks at the offense and is like, this scheme, Lamar aside, Lamar's phenomenal. This scheme just isn't working in the league. We might have to actually throw the ball to wide receivers at some point. Maybe this ship is sailed in terms schematically. And the thing you mentioned that I wanted to say before is the Deshaun Watson situation with the Browns. Off the field, throw that all away. Just the contract. The owners were livid with the Browns. Now everyone is going to ask for this, as they should. Lamar has every right to ask for that. He is an MVP. I mean, he's been better than Watson. How could you not ask for that plus? But it's a terrible contract. No team should give him it. You know what I mean? So there's an impasse.
Right. Yeah. And teams don't want to be forced. They don't want their hands to be forced that they have to just cave on everything every single time.
Right.
And you get the feeling the Ravens are one of those teams that aren't wired in a way that they are going to cave in that situation. You get the feeling that Lamar Jackson is too, and they kind of been validated on both sides with the way this season has gone.
Yeah.
In other quarterback news, speaking of potential one and dones in the playoffs, Tua not going to play. It's already official, Matt, that Skylar Thompson is going to start for the Miami Dolphins against the Bills in the wild card playoff round this weekend.
Well, I mean, I'm not harping on the Hamlin stuff, but 3 teams were eligible for a bye: the Bengals, the Bills, the Chiefs. The Chiefs end up getting it because, partially because the Bills and Bengals game never occurred. Well, sure feels like the Bengals and Bills might have a bye this week. I mean, right. I'm not saying you're resting starters. It's the playoffs, but they do not look like competitive games to me. And we know what's happening with the Miami quarterback situation. I'm speculating on Baltimore. But if we're right and you don't see Lamar or Tua, I mean, the fourth quarters might not be worth watching.
DeAndre Hopkins, will the Arizona Cardinals be able to trade him? Or is this one of those situations where you hear about Team X is trying to trade player A, and that just means he's probably going to end up getting cut because of salary situations and those types of things?
Well, he was suspended to start the year, so another strike would probably be a whole year. I'm not certain about that. He's up in age. He's still really good, but he's super expensive. 2 things to take away for this from me are, I find it very interesting that a team without a coach or a GM is already saying they're going to trade a guy. You haven't even hired anybody yet.
A little curious. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's going. I mean, ownership has already decided that whoever they hire, I'm sure, is going to say, yeah, you're getting rid of him too. Get him off the books. Now, I bet most teams might say, I'll give you a 6th round pick to take him off your hands, maybe. But this is one of the beauties if you're the Bears. The Bears have so much ungodly amount of cap space right now that you can't even really use it. And if you do, you're going to overspend, like crazy. But you could be the team that says, I have this young quarterback. I have terrible receivers. I'll take the contract, and Fields will love it. You know what I mean? Kind of not the A.J. Brown move or the Tyreek Hill move, but because those guys were worth 1st round picks because of their age and contract. But yeah, I'll assume some of your debt because I can't spend all my money anyway, and he's a heck of a lot better than what we got.
Next, we are going to open up the Wednesday Peacock and Williamson mailbag. We've got questions about the future of Sean McVay, head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, Herbert versus Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs, and a whole bunch more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you in part by TurboTax. Go to TurboTax and do not do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes, right? Seeing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. You get what I'm saying here. Let TurboTax do your taxes for you. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can relax. Feel good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? So come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. I'll tell the folks out there about Ultimate Football GM. It's a fantastic new game, and I'm excited to be working with the folks at Ultimate Football GM because if you've ever, like me, dreamed of being an NFL GM, managing your football franchise from top to bottom throughout the ups and downs of a season, your dream can come true with this game. Manage every strategic aspect for your team. Play through the season. Lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency, and, of course, the draft and all the ups and downs of a season, all in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM, completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. And Locked On listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game store. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Okay, Matt. Sean McVay. We got a question from Jeremy about Sean McVay. Is Sean McVay really going to leave the Los Angeles Rams and walk away? And what are the ramifications of such a move? And I'm kind of going back and forth on this. One of the reports I saw about Sean McVay isn't so much that he's burnt out and doesn't want to coach in the NFL anymore. He just doesn't want to rebuild. And I'm thinking, is that what we should be striving for here with the head coach hire? It's like, all right, come in for 5 or 6 years, spend all of our natural resources, right? It's sort of like an apocalyptic alien movie, the aliens have sucked their old planet dry and they come to Earth, and because they're out of resources, right? And it's like, is that what we want from our head coaches? We kind of saw that in it to a degree with Sean Payton and their cap situation and what's going on with the New Orleans Saints and where he left them. And then now with the Los Angeles Rams, like, is that should that be the new, like, prototype? They got a trophy, right? They got rings out of it.
Sure.
And should that be what you do? Come in, use every draft pick, every bit of salary cap space into the future that you can to be as good as you can for a short time, and then, walk away, press the button, and watch it all blow up behind you. Let the team have a terrible year where they eat all the dead money, then they trade you as head coach and other players to get draft picks to help their rebuild start over again later. Like, is this dubious for the NFL? It feels dirty. I don't like the idea of a coach walking away because of their process put them in a place where he doesn't want to rebuild with that team anymore. I don't think that's right. But then again, should that be the process to make your team as good as you can for short periods of time, blow it up and start over again?
It's really interesting because you alluded to this earlier in the week, and I've been thinking about it a lot since. Like, this might be the beginning of a trend. But you have to be a certain level head coach. Like McVay can get away with it. 2 guys on the open market, Harbaugh and Peyton. What if they call Tepper in Carolina and say, you guys have never won one. You're an anxious, hungry owner. You got all kinds of resources. Give me a ton. And we're going to call the Rams and trade for Ramsey and Cup. We're going to take Hopkins off Arizona's hands. we're going to go out and trade up for not even trade up for a quarterback. Go get Carr, Jimmy, somebody like that, and we're going to use every draft pick we possibly have here, and we're going to win this division this year because it stinks, and we're going to win for the next 3 years, and then see you later. I mean, like, Carolina fans might be listening to us right now going, I'm in, sign me up.
Lamar Jackson, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. That's a perfect example. We're going to trade for Lamar, and then we're going to send a draft pick for Kupp and Ramsey and Hopkins because they don't have anything. We're not going to pick in the first round for the next 8 years. So be it. I mean, I bet there's some people listening that says, sign me up. I'm cool with it. But it might be a trend.
Right. And do the Rams fans and Rams ownership feel good about it? It's like, okay, we got our ring. Mm-hmm. Or are they sitting there thinking, wait a second, whoa, where are you going? What's going on here? This is not
what you're leaving us with.
Right. Yeah. It's right. All gravy when you're winning. And then all of a sudden it stops happening. He's like, okay, are we going to be the Jets now?
Yeah.
Or the Lions for 30 years? How far back are we going to be set?
Our oceans are polluted and there's no more resources. And it's the Lorax, your trees, all your truffle trees are gone,
I'm kind of torn on it. The fact that McVay won, I think, helps.
Oh yeah, you better get worse.
Like, what if they would have? They were very close. What if Jaquiski Tartt catches that Matthew Stafford arm punt in the NFC Championship game?
Sure.
Right? And so now. And the Rams, even at this deadline, they didn't think they were necessarily out of it. They were trying to trade for Brian Burns. They were trying to trade for Christian McCaffrey. What if they probably would have tried harder to trade, and it could have still fallen apart for them. And they trade even more future resources if they didn't win a Super Bowl last year. So, that's a slippery slope as well, because winning is one thing, but you're not guaranteed to go get there and win that title either. And you might still sap your franchise of all those resources and then walk away from the rebuild. So that in that instance, it's definitely not worth it.
And I'm not implying they, weren't a deserved Super Bowl champ, but 365 days ago, going into the playoffs, they weren't the favorite. They weren't 16-1. Like, this is easy. Right. Just roll it out there. That they have nothing to worry about. Specifically though, to McVay, to answer this question, he has so much power. I mean, he's got a ton of money in the bank. He's got chunky soup commercials. He's only 36. He has a ring on his finger. From what I understand, he has another ring on his finger and just recently got married. So maybe he wants to spend time with the new wife or start a family, or I don't know what he's doing personally, but actually have a life, because trust me, if you're a head coach of the NFL, you do not have a life. You could make a fortune on the air. Everyone would love to have him in the booth and would pay blank check, and he could do that for a year or two, stay extremely relevant, and every owner is going to hear him on Monday Night Football or Thursday night or whatever and be like, boy, I could hire him. And then he could pick and choose his job after that. I mean, he's going to be 38 in 2 years,
And you could argue that it's going to be a rebuild anyway. So how about McVay leaves and then we're able to get a couple of picks for him in the future? And we're seeing that with the Saints now. The Saints are going to get something back for Sean Payton getting a new job that will help them in the future. And if they weren't going to win anyway, even with Payton, and who knows what that would have looked like, then maybe it is okay to help the actual rebuild, just like rip the Band-Aid off and get you the most amount of picks for that coach moving on. And everyone wins in the end. I don't know. So interesting.
Last Rams note, though, is I read a blurb yesterday that McVay has told his coaches he's fine with them looking for other jobs, that he'll let them go. Well, he's not coming back then. I mean, you think he should come back and be like, but I lost my right-hand man. I lost my quarterback coach. He's in Arizona, and I got to play against him. Like, you want your dudes. You're not letting your troops leave and then go out to battle without them. You know what I mean?
League. Yeah. Imagine you're talking about 365 days ago. Imagine just 6 months ago. You're like, okay, Sean McVay is not going to be Rams head coach next year, and Lamar Jackson is not going to be a quarterback of the Ravens in 2023 potentially, right? Like, how bizarro of a world would you have believed that was going to be?
And it makes me wonder: is Stafford going to play football next year? Is Aaron Donald going to play football next year? Like, I can see them both hanging it up. Why not?
Yeah, and maybe McVay already knows that too. He's like, right, I'm screwed anyway. So
I'm sure he's had a conversation with Stafford and Aaron Donald.
Exactly. Oh, goodness gracious. All right, more questions on this episode of Peacock and Williamson coming up next. Today's episode is presented in part by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you do, super easy and super fun, by the way. Pick up 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on that entry. You're not competing against other people. There's not some big pool of sharks that you're competing against, and you don't know how many people are against you, and you're not building an entire team. No, you just find the projections, just 2 to 5 projections that you believe that player will score more or less than those Prize Picks projections, and you're just playing you versus those projections available at Prize Picks. And tons of NFL projections, obviously, for the playoffs, but NBA as well. This is daily fantasy. You can play every single day at Prize Picks. Golf, college hoops, women's hoops, NASCAR, tennis, esports, disc golf, cricket, MMA, boxing, you name it. You can find projections at Prize Picks. Every entry can be made in less than 60 seconds. It's that easy. Withdrawals are safe and fast, and Prize Picks currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50 more to play with. Don't forget, enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. I've been getting a lot of questions, Matt, about Brock Purdy. And we talked enough 49ers on this podcast. I do another entire podcast about the 49ers. But this question keeps popping up. And this is from non-49ers fans. And a frequent tweeter into the show, JDS, says, if Brock Purdy does blank, he will start for the Niners in 2023. And I want to get your opinion on it. I think he's already done enough to compete with Trey Lance for that job. And if he starts winning playoff games, he might take the first snaps in training camp and not the second snaps in training camp.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about this, and I think people phrase it wrong. Like, what does he have to do to be the starter? I don't know that it matters at this point. I mean, if they lose this week, does that mean, he stinks? It has to be Lance. I mean, he's done a lot. I mean, I know it's a small amount, but he's valuable.
He's done more than Lance too. He's played a lot more football. There's more college tape on him. There's more pro tape on him now. He's actually a little bit older than Trey Lance. He just played a lot more football, and so you really have a good idea of who Brock Purdy is. And I waited for the first couple of games, like, he's going to fall on his face, rookie mistakes. Mm-hmm. He's just not showing them. And it could happen in the playoffs. And I think the quicker they exit, the less cemented his status is with the 49ers. But there's also, like, if he takes them all the way to the Super Bowl, teams are going to come calling. And they might come calling for Lance. They might come calling for Purdy. Mm-hmm. So you might have to make some decisions, some hard decisions, because teams might come with enough for you to actually start thinking about this. And so maybe it doesn't even get to the point where it's a competition because a team buys one of these players away from you. And Brock Purdy's starting to play that well to make the 49ers at least think and pick up the phone about some of these calls that they might get in the offseason, which could add another huge wrinkle. And if they don't get good offers, then you don't trade either one, right? But I think there might be trade offers as it pertains to some of these teams that might be outside looking in, and when it comes to young quarterbacks in the draft. So this definitely not over, but Brock Purdy has played so well. He actually, this is what's crazy, and this is no hyperbole, Matt. The 49ers have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl because Brock Purdy is quarterback the way he's playing. If he keeps playing the way he has through the first 6 games of his career, they got better as a team and have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl than they did before, which is just a wild statement to say about a rookie 7th-round quarterback.
So there's a lot to unpeel there. So it's not like they're winning in spite of him. He's an asset at this point. I mean, he's a net positive. He
has played the best quarterback for an extended stretch in the Kyle Shanahan era for the 49ers. That's literally happening. Okay. And like,
I'm not doubting it. Yeah,
we're in the middle of it, but when we zoom out later, they're going to, be writing scripts of a movie about this. This is pretty unbelievable stuff that we're seeing right now with Brock Purdy, how well he's playing. And, there's some throws that's like, okay, well, he doesn't have a huge arm and some of those things, but his preparedness, the way he processes, he's better than his college tape because of what, my buddy Eric Crocker that I do Locked On 49ers with, in a separate interview on his YouTube channel, he did an interview with the guy who was one of his quarterback coaches pre-draft. And they said that Brock Purdy added 5 miles per hour to his ball, 5 miles per hour to his ball, which is a lot when we're talking. So he's not quite the same guy that we saw in college either. That arm's playing up a little bit more, and you're seeing it, especially in the short to intermediate. He's got plenty of zip on those throws, and he's just operating the offense at a super high level. It's been pretty remarkable.
Comparing anyone to Tom Brady is foolish, and I shouldn't even do it. But it does remind me for our younger viewers, rookie year Brady or second year Brady, when Belichick had to decide in playoff games between Bledsoe, who was a star at the time, and Brady, like this is a real conversation now. This isn't a cute little one-off situation. And I am so intrigued with what Lance could do in that offense with those weapons. I mean, everyone can carry the ball and all. I mean, that athleticism on the field, but he also scares the heck out of me. I mean, he hasn't done anything that I've got excited about 3 years. I mean, it's like Deshaun Watson-esque, and we saw Watson come back off this break and look terrible. Like, playing football is important to be good, and he was not a polished product coming into the league. I mean, there's so much moldable clay there to get excited about, but I didn't think he looked great when he's played. I mean, but that I didn't, dig too deep into that. It's like, that's what we expect. But he didn't play that last year in college. I mean, like, it's been a long time.
There's so little to go on. And I've seen flashes of it, and it's like, oh, wow. And he's a super talented. And I think the team really believes in him from the neck up, too, which is really important. And that's where Brock Purdy is shining right now with the confidence and just how he's playing. But this is definitely a conversation, and it's going to continue into the offseason for sure. I want to move on to another question.
I'm going to go back just a second. I'm sorry. I know you talked this to death, but I mean, think about how little you would have invested in the quarterback room salary cap wise. I mean, that's the best gift in the world, a 7th round player.
Yeah.
That's it,
Brock Purdy is a legitimately good starting NFL quarterback. There's almost no more valuable from a dollar's perspective player than a 7th round starting quarterback.
Right. It's like when Russell Wilson and Dak, became what they became, but even cheaper. And if I'm the Colts, might I give you the 4th pick in the draft for Lance? Like you'd get he's still pretty valuable to somebody.
The Colts is the team too, because the reports after the 2021 draft, and look, they didn't fire their GM. So
right.
They had a gold star, a gold helmet, or whatever it is that they do next to certain players. Trey Lance was one of those, and they weren't able to go up and get him, but they loved him. They had a high grade on him. I
didn't know that.
If you are the Colts, and who knows, maybe they go hire DeMeco Ryans from the 49ers, and have some.
Right.
If you're the Colts, I mean, the number 4 pick should probably get it done for the 49ers, right? Like you have to
I'm all ears if I'm the Niners. Right.
You can do so much from there and trading down or getting some stud defender. I mean, imagine
Jalen Carter on that front or Will Anderson. Right.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? And then rolling with Brock Purdy, and they've got a lot of expensive pieces to pay around that. So if you have a cheap quarterback, that helps. But the Colts is the really interesting team just because of that little nugget about how much they liked him in the draft. What if their grade on him is higher than CJ Stroud? And they have to trade up to go get one of those guys, and instead they could
just swap it out,
or maybe even keep the 4th pick and trade next year's first or something. Right.
And or then Carolina or Atlanta. I mean, there's so many options.
So this is going to get interesting in the offseason now when you have stuff like the Lamar Jackson thing and the draft and the 49ers teams are going to come calling. So if teams come calling with enough, the 49ers have to listen to some of these offers with their quarterbacks, or it'll be at least a competition, I think, at this point. And and
if Purdy falls on his face next year, you're going to pick high and you're going to have a ton of draft picks anyways to go get the next guy.
Right.
Make a Lance-like move again, so I'd be interested.
Speaking of young quarterbacks, Michael wants to know on Thursday, he said probably we'll be answering this on Thursday or later in the week, and we will talk about this matchup, but he's talking about building a team with Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. Who would you choose to build your team around right now after the emergence of Trevor Lawrence here in his second year?
I'm a huge Lawrence believer. I don't think he's as special of a talent as everyone made him out to be. Like he's a flawless prospect. Frankly, Herbert's more talented, throws the football better, stronger arm. I know more about Herbert. I'm totally smitten with Herbert. I mean, he would be my pick easily. But if we're drafting quarterbacks, period, I think Herbert's my 3rd or 4th pick off the board, and Lawrence is 6th. But I mean, they're both awesome. They're both would be wonderfully high on the list. But Herbert's a slam dunk for me. I adore him. I'd love to see him in a different system too.
An extra tick of physical ability there with Herbert. Who's got better hair?
Lawrence. Nobody's better hair than Lawrence.
Yeah, well, you know what? Lawrence's hair is longer, but it's so straight. Herbert, I think, has a little extra with what he's able to do with his hair. So even that one's close. Even that one's really close. So no, but I think you nailed it. Like that's so close. And if you were redrafting the league, they're both top 5 picks probably.
Right. I mean, I'm in on both, but Herbert I know a little more about, and I think he's got a little more gift. He's a little gifted.
Does Lawrence have a little bit more from a running a team perspective? And like he's got Herbert.
I think he's also a better runner.
NFL, we might find that maybe Lawrence is better because he has something else, you know, a Joe Burrow-ish X factor that allowed him to win so much in college and is going to make him a better pro. But if you're just betting on the tools, Herbert does have a tick more than Trevor Lawrence, and Herbert's a really good quarterback, really smart quarterback too. But it'd be real nice to have either one of those guys to build your franchise around.
Oh yeah, everyone's envious of both. I mean, Mahomes and Allen and Burrow are the only ones that are even in the conversation with those guys to me, you know, to build around.
Thanks, everybody, for all of your questions. Thanks, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check out everything else the network has to offer. Subscribe up to the YouTube channel, Locked On NFL, also the Locked On NFL podcast there. Tons of other great podcasts, Game to Game, the Key Predictions podcast, and so much more. Your team is covered right here at the Locked On Podcast Network, and Matt and I back tomorrow. More news. We're going to start making picks for the playoff games, and Matt's got the spreadsheet going, right?
Yeah, it's me tomorrow. It's done. I'll send it to you tonight.
Tomorrow, we're gonna rank the different aspects of these playoff football teams on tomorrow's episode. Talk to you then, right here, Peacock and Williamson.